Today, we are talking about a topic that is a little bit outside of the scope of what we think about in terms of running an online digital product business. But yet, it's something that is super powerful and something that can really impact our visibility. And that is public relations, publicity, media relations, getting on big news spots, getting on more people's podcasts. Things like that. Essentially, we're talking about PR, and we're doing it with a friend of mine, Amanda Berlin, who is a visibility and business consultant for entrepreneurs. She works with clients on holistic visibility to help them grow their business and impact based on tactics employed during her 12 years in the corporate PR world, where she was guiding strategy for major brands. Amanda and her clients have been featured in all types of media, from Business Insider to Entrepreneur on Fire and WNYW Fox 5 to Bustle.com. She's the host of the Empowered Publicity Podcast and loves arming soul-powered business owners with the ideas and skill set they need to go from hidden industry gems to recognizable, trusted experts. And when you really think about it, that trusted experts part that she talks about, when you're selling a digital product online, you are an expert in what you're doing. So getting known for that and seeking out visibility for what you're already good at is something we should care about and be concerned about. And Amanda is going to give us some really actionable and practical tips on how to use PR to your advantage in your own online business. So let's go ahead and dive right into today's episode. You are listening to the Empowered Business Podcast. I'm your host, Monica Froese, a mom of two and your secret weapon to creating a six-figure digital product business. I'm on a mission to help 1,000 women make $100,000 a year. That's right, $100 million towards financial independence for women. As an online business expert, I am teaching you everything I know right here week after week, so you can join us on the journey to $100 million. Sound good? Then let's jump in. Amanda, welcome to the show. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Monica. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, funny that we have podcasts that start with the same word, empowered. Must be our thing. Right?
I know. Yes, we would be in the same, right next to each other in an alphabetical list.
You do come up. When I search my own podcast, Amanda's does come up because what's the name of your podcast is?
Empowered Publicity.
Empowered Publicity, which, as you can probably imagine, is what we're going to be talking about today. So before we get started, can you tell us about your entrepreneurial journey, how it started, and then what your business is today?
Absolutely. So for 12 years, I've been in PR marketing visibility for 20 years. And it only recently dawned on me that that was the number, which is just completely mind-boggling. For 12 years, I worked in the New York City corporate PR agency world, where I was responsible for helping brands kind of coalesce their message, create something that was going to be palatable for the media, and then get out there in front of the right people. And I felt like as I kind of worked my way through the corporate world, like my soul was slowly dying. And I needed to find a different way to do this work that would enable me to have a positive impact on the world in some way. And eventually I realized that that formula that I had gotten down to a science when I was working as editorial director at a firm, meeting with our client, whether it was a financial firm or consumer product or an entertainment entity or a nonprofit or a beauty product or whatever it was. When you work in an agency, you work with every kind of product that's out there. I would meet with our client and, kind of talk to them about what their ideal message was that they wanted to get out there. And I would kind of be like, okay, I like this, but what concerns me is that, this, and this, you can't go out and just say whatever you want to say. You have to do something that's useful for the audience. And so we'll tweak the message in this way. We'll create a segment that could be seen on your local television station or whatever. And then I would create the pitch that would then be used by our media relations team to go out and pitch the media. So I realized that formula, taking a message, pairing it with a spokesperson, someone that was going to go out and deliver the message, and then get it out there in front of the right people, was the formula that those of us in business needed to use. And what also has dawned on me over the years is that those of us in small business, those of us who are solo entrepreneurs, cannot access that support from the corporate PR world. That is not accessible to us, and it wasn't made for us. I do not ever want my clients who are feeling frustrated that not enough people know about them, or they have that, those fist wagging moments, fist to the heavens. That should be me on that podcast or in that interview or featured in that magazine. I don't want them going out and hiring a high-priced publicist to try to get them that coverage. I want them to be empowered to create relationships and develop the skill set so that they can access those opportunities in perpetuity over time, so that they're not stuck in this I have to pay for this visibility, or I need to have a huge team. No, you just need to know the right people and know how to approach them and start to create those relationships. And so that's what I work with my clients on today, is I help them figure out the best avenue for visibility. And it's not always media. I know that what I just spoke about was very media kind of influenced in its messaging, but really what I help my clients do is cultivate the right PR strategy, creating the right relationships with their public that are going to develop an evangelism for their work, that are going to develop the people who are going to support them and develop the relationships that are going to carry their work forward to more of the right people.
Okay. So I have a lot of questions about this. I come from a corporate background as well. So I am not unfamiliar with public relations and how it works and the stories and the press releases and getting on major outlets and stuff like that. That's not foreign to me. It is foreign to me to think about how to do it for my own business, and even the direct correlation to the ROI of it. Why would I, as a digital product creator, want to get into these media outlets? So I have a lot of questions for you, but I think we'll start there. So, let's just say, I mentioned before we start recording, I've done a few things that they came to me. They found my website. I was on Fox News once. I got invited to the White House, which was really cool.
Whoa.
Right? Yes. President Obama found me back in the day when I think there was a lot less competition out there. Let's see. And then I also did a local news spot once. So I've done things in media, but even so, the White House is a great addition to my story, but I can't say that the national news spots really did anything that made me money, or was a direct correlation, to money, I guess.
Yes.
So I'm very curious, how does this work for people that are creating digital products and have online businesses?
Yeah. Okay. So I love that you illustrated in your anecdote something that I have to educate my potential clients on all the time, because a lot of the expressed need that someone will often come to me with is, I just need to be on podcasts. I just need to be on more podcasts, something like that.
Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah. And so I need to invite them to take a step back and look at what is the big goal of this action you want to take to be on more podcasts. Because if it is to get more clients, then we need to look at an entire holistic scope of activities that we will take to enhance your visibility, and not just pursue media. Because media does a very specific thing for a business, and only the most intimate form of media, which is podcasts, can sometimes result in new clients. Most often, what media does for a business is validate it. it doesn't always result in new clients. So the fact that you've been featured on the local Fox television station, the fact that you've been invited to the White House, the fact that you've been profiled in a major magazine or whatever those media credentials are, someone who finds you through other types of visibility activities that you're doing, like strategic partnerships, like events, like speaking engagements, like, those more kind of word of mouth style interactions. When they go to your website and they see that you've been featured on the local Fox station, you've been invited to the White House, you've been profiled here or there, they're like, okay, Monica's the real deal. And now I trust that info I got through this person, or because I saw her here, I trust my gut that she knows what she's talking about. So media is a great validator, and it can instill this air of credibility around you, but it's not going to attract the right client, most likely, because media is so mass, right? Like we call it mass media, the mass media, right? It's so, the audience is so wide, it doesn't descend deep into your target niche audience. And therefore, if you are offering a service or a product that is a bit more of an investment, you're not going to connect with the person that's ready to make that investment because they're not exactly the right person, most likely.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me because you're right. Okay, the credibility part of that makes a lot of sense. So we do, of course, have like the featured on and all that. And you're right, it does provide credibility when you got picked up, on like a national news spot or a magazine. And when you said that being on a podcast is the more intimate media and has the bigger potential to lead to actual clients, I get more people come to me because they hear me on a podcast and say, oh, I listened to this podcast you were on and I heard you say X, Y, Z. Some of actually the best emails I've ever gotten were something I said on a podcast, and then they picked up on it and emailed me, and then it started that relationship. So when you work with clients, then how do you balance, like, do you work with getting them on media still? Or is it primarily on podcasts? And then like, what's after the podcast? What else should they do?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I work with clients, we always start, there's an adage sort of in the like woo-woo community, begin with the end in mind, right? You need to know where you're going. It's a very practical adage, but we need to know where you're going in order to create a game plan for you to get there. And so we always start with the goal. What's the big picture motivation for your visibility strategy? And I help my clients figure out, like, what is their goal? Do they want more clients? A lot of my clients want more clients or they want to sell more of their product. They want, revenue. That's really that's sort of that bucket of goals is like, do you want more revenue in your business? Do you want to put a big idea out there? Do you want to sort of be seen as the thought leader in this space? These are all examples of different goals. Do you want to change the conversation in your industry? Do you want to give information about a new trend that you're seeing? Something like this. So there might be various goals and there may be overlapping goals, but if it depends on where you want to go, and that kind of dictates what we're going to do in terms of your visibility strategy. And when I work with clients, what informs our work is this 3-part framework for visibility that I've developed over the years through my work in corporate, which kind of interestingly, the way that this framework developed was through all of these conversations I've had over the last 9 years with entrepreneurs. But then when I sort of looked back at what corporate PR is, this framework is exactly what the big firms utilize for their clients. So what we look at these are the 3 kind of pillars of visibility that I work on with my clients: collaborations and alliances. So who are your strategic partners and who are you aligning with? Who's also talking to the people that you want to be talking to, which offers you the closest approximation to word of mouth that you can create through a visibility strategy, through not word of mouth. They're not actual word of mouth, but as close to word of mouth as we can get. So who are your strategic partners? Who are your collaborators and your allies? That's the first. That's kind of the innermost concentric circle. Then the next level out is speaking and events. So where can you be seen on stage? How are we positioning you as an expert, but also making you super relatable so that you are, even in the room with people who might create a relationship with you, but you have that benefit of sort of like being put in front of them as the expert. So where can you be speaking? And events is super overlooked as a visibility strategy, but so powerful. And this is one of my favorite ways to market my own business. And you may have seen about 1 month ago, I did this big, what I called Pitch School Live, this big event that had been, because of pandemic, 2 years in the making. But it's one of my favorite tactics to utilize because it puts you at the center of something. It offers a valuable experience to your attendees. And it also creates that air of credibility because you've been able to create this experience for your public. You're creating that relationship with your public, again, PR. So that's the second concentric circle. And then the outermost concentric circle is media, which is super powerful. And I love media for so many reasons, not the least of which is it's just exciting to be interviewed and exciting to see your name in print. And it definitely has a positive impact on your business. It's just, we need to couple it with these other tactics so that we're making sure that you're infusing revenue, that you're creating visibility that brings in revenue as well as brings in credibility.
Okay, I feel like we have to talk about the mindset behind this. Because as soon as you said, I am not a shy person at all. And so a lot of people in my real life, I would say it with air quotes, shocked that getting on stage would scare the bejeebers out of me. But I think that's actually fairly common that getting on a stage is not the most comfortable thing for a lot of people. So since I've done some media spots and stuff, like I know that they happen at the last minute. So like you don't really have time to like draw it out. It's like, hey, the limo's picking you up in 4 hours and you're going to be on a national news spot. Have fun. So the mindset, how do you work with your clients who are like terrified to get on a stage and speak at an event or get on a national news spot when it comes up in the last minute?
I love that question because the inner work of visibility is something I love working on with my clients. And one of the things, there are two things that I think that, one of them is particular to me, and one of them is just sort of like a general adage around mindset. And so I'll start with the first kind of general thing, the preparation and just the preparedness, I would say, is a major antidote to the anxiety that you might feel in getting on a stage or doing an interview. And I've had clients that have gotten like a call from CNN headline news to like come into the studio and you're going to be talking about this and you're going to be responding to like this thing that happened on this other news outlet or whatever. And so like this client is not like a pundit. This is not her job to like respond to others. She's not a media analyst. And so, but like you show up and you remember that this is actually what I talk about in talks that I give around media mindset. It's that your stuff, like what you know, and no one else knows what you know. And that's just a fact.
I feel like this is me telling when I teach how to create a digital product, the mindset that we have to talk about how your knowledge, you're the one that you have to own your knowledge. And the fact that people always want to downplay how much they know, but they are an expert and they have to own that. It's like the same thing. Isn't that funny?
Absolutely.
Like mindset works. The same mindset issues come up in all these different areas.
Yes, right. We struggle with the same things no matter what situation we're in. So your stuff. That's something that I used to say to myself every single time I was preparing for an interview. That was my mantras. I know my stuff. I know my stuff. So your stuff. The person who has contacted you, they also believe you know your stuff. They believe that you have something valuable to offer to their audience, or they would never have contacted you. And they need you. That's the other thing, is they need you to show up in the fullest expression of your knowledge and expertise, because you are the source that they're relying on for the information that only you have. So they need you. And then finally, the audience. Remember that they also will benefit from you showing up with your expertise, and they are worth it. Like, they're worth you putting yourself in this kind of uncomfortable situation of being in the spotlight. I think that all of us who are service-oriented, impact-oriented business people, we would agree that we're willing to be uncomfortable if that kind of thing makes you uncomfortable, if it means that we'll reach the people who need us.
Agreed. That is such a great way to connect it to why you should do it. Like, imagine all the people you can help if you're brave enough to get up on stage and speak about the thing that you're already the expert on. Like, you already know it so well. Like, you could talk, I always say, I like to be able to talk circles around my topic. Like, I could talk circles around anyone on my topic because I know it so well. So why would I get nervous going on stage? Yet I do every single time.
Right. Yeah,
so
sure.
That's interesting, because every time I was thrust into like a media spot, or even on the limited times I have spoken on stage for my business. I used to do it in corporate, which is kind of funny because I would say I know stuff. My own business, I feel more confident in than I probably ever did in my career, to be honest with you. So I'm not foreign to it, but I never had anyone to prep me. So like when I got thrown in the national news spot, oh my gosh, it was like a deer in headlights. And it was one of those things where they were picking you up in 2 hours for the satellite station. I had no one to ask questions. I didn't have a you to ask questions to.
Right.
So like, if that happens to someone, because it's very possible that someone listening to this is totally brand new to this and could get thrust into a situation where they have this really cool opportunity and they're scared out of their mind. How should they prepare? Like, I would love to know this.
Yeah. So, well, to your point that's sort of the second point that I was going to make about the mindset is having the right support around this makes a huge difference. And that's what I offer to my clients is like, I'm there for your visibility SOSs. Like, we can, I'm always available for that. And, there's a lot of times where, to me, pointing out something that like I'll provide my client with a framework that they're going to deliver for a particular talk, and the way that they can seed in messages about kind of the deeper work that an audience could do with them if they buy their course or if they enter into a deeper engagement with them. And I'll hear all the time my clients reactions are like, right, that totally makes sense. And I never would have thought of that.
When you just said framework, I'm like, this is really no different than developing a digital product. It's
right.
Like everything that you're saying about talking in the media and talking on stage is no different than how you structure a product, which is just crazy to me. I never would have.
Your framework is your framework. And
I guess it just is a disconnect, and to think that that's what you would go and talk. I don't know why. You're blowing my mind a little bit.
You would reframe it. And I imagine it's quite similar to what you do with your clients as well. But yeah, so to answer your question about preparing when you are confronted with the unexpected visibility opportunity, so I would say gather information if you can from the person that's reaching out to you. You can ask them as many questions as you want. You don't have to pretend you know everything. You don't know, like, they may be able to provide you in advance with the questions that the interviewer is going to ask you, and you can prepare that way. You can even ask, what's the length of the interview? And that way you'll have a sense, and try to get as much information as you can from that person reaching out to you. That's one of the things that I think would be probably most impactful, because the unknown is the scariest place to be.
It sure is. It's like, and I usually don't get lost for words, but I do remember the second that they told me my earpiece that I was on in live national TV. I remember that initial, and it's funny because when you watch the spot that I was on, don't Google it. It makes me embarrassed. But anyways, don't Google it, everyone. But I remember like that 3 second, it doesn't seem like I was in sheer panic, luckily, but it was like 3 seconds of sheer panic where it was like a black slate on my brain. I couldn't remember. If you asked me my name, I feel like I wouldn't have been able to tell you what my name was. It felt very terrifying. I didn't know what they were going to be asking me. And I probably didn't even think to ask what they were going to be asking me. And now I'm like, duh, I should have asked that.
That's totally fair. And also like, just to normalize, it's a very strange experience to go on live TV, because also what you're referring to, the earpiece, that is super distracting and disorienting. And if you don't know that's going to happen, then you're kind of like, what is happening? So asking, I think it's always very disarming to be just as upfront and honest as possible. And so if you've never done something like that before, just say to the producer, this is my first time doing a live interview. What can I expect? And they'll tell you, we're going to give you an earpiece. You'll hear the technical director in your ear who's going to tell you when you're live. You're going to be sitting across from the anchor. She's going to ask you questions. Like, they'll hopefully take the time to explain what's going to happen. And it kind of made me remember early in my career, I was a producer for press junkets. And so we would do a series of live interviews with talent who was like in a studio via satellite with these local television networks. And sometimes you'd get like feedback in your earpiece. Sometimes there'd be like, there's so much happening that you're completely justified in that 3-second sheer panic, because it is like, even the most experienced interviewers, like you'll see sometimes an anchor or someone on the news, like rip that earpiece out of their ear because they're probably hearing themselves back in their ear. There's some snafu with the feed or whatever. And you hear sometimes you're on the phone, you hear an echo of yourself and you're like, I can't even stand to hear, like, I'm okay. I can listen to my own podcast episodes. I cannot listen to my own voice coming back through the phone line. And so there's so much that can go wrong that just to normalize your experience, like the panic is real.
It is. But I always, when I did it, I remember coming out of the room saying, I'm never doing this again. Because I felt like I was going to throw up everywhere. It was so nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But my husband looked at me because he went with me. Luckily, that helped a little bit. And he said, yes, you are. If this ever happens, you are absolutely going to do this again, because like, this is your thing. Like, if you're going to build your business and it's to help other people, why would you turn down the opportunity to talk about that with anyone who asks, really?
Absolutely.
Like, fine. I guess if I do it again, I will. But I already feel at ease knowing that there are people out there like you that help people like me who know what they're talking about, but scared to be thrust into new situations.
Yeah.
They're unfamiliar with the surroundings and they can trip them up. So I have a question about the podcast. Okay. So since that's part of your publicity, like how you help people, when you work with people to get them on podcasts, are you pitching for them, or are you helping them go and pitch for themselves?
I love this question. I have a very strong philosophy on this. I believe that my clients are best served by pitching themselves, because I want them to create the relationships that are going to serve their business over time. And I know as a podcaster, and maybe you've experienced this as well, when I get a pitch from a third party, the person might be amazing, but it never quite hits the mark. It never feels like they really get the way that they fit into my show, what we'll talk about. And it doesn't feel as much of a connection as it might have otherwise if that person had pitched themselves. And the thing, especially with podcasts, that's so important, and why we need to be pitching ourselves to podcasts, is because podcasters are you and I. Podcasters are everyday people. We're not broadcasters. We are people who created a platform because we believe in a particular message, and we cultivated a community of listeners, and we are protective of those listeners. And so when someone reaches out to us and says, I love what you're up to. I really dig this conversation that you had with so-and-so, or this point you made blew my mind. That is the person that I want to interview on my podcast, because I recognize they're part of the community already. And my other listeners, the other people in the community that I've fostered, will feel equally inspired by hearing from this person.
Yeah, I actually am quite surprised. I don't know why I'm surprised, to be honest with you, but I am on all the terrible pitches I've gotten so early. So early on, the second I put it up, it was like bad pitch galore. And I don't know why that's shocking, considering the amount of blogging guest post bad pitches I've gotten over the years. Right. But yeah, actually, I just had one that really resonates with what you're saying, where it was a third party. So it was like I would say they were working with the equivalent of what you would help people with, except first of all, I mean, my podcast is really for women, right? And it was a dude pitching me for a woman, and that automatically creates a disconnect for me. Right. And he was talking about like being a mom, and I'm like, but you're a dude. So this is like, this is weird that you're pitching her for her. You're right. There was a disconnect. She might be great, but something missing in the pitch because it wasn't coming from her.
Right.
And I actually had forwarded it off to a teammate. I'm like, I think she could be a great fit, but I'm not sure. Like it didn't, the pitch wasn't rounded out because it didn't come from her.
Yeah. Right. And so if you have to work too hard for it, if you as the decision maker have to work too hard to figure it out, if she's going to be a good fit, then it's more likely, like she's lucky that you gave it as much of a shot as you did to figure out if she might be a good fit, because more likely than not, someone's going to be like, I have to work too hard to figure out if she's a good fit. This is a no.
Oh yeah.
And the other thing that I want to say too about, the original question, like, do I pitch my clients or do I encourage them to pitch themselves? Because my philosophy is so steeped in relationships, I will always make a connection for my clients if I can, an introduction, or if it makes sense for me to pitch them myself, I will. But by and large, I want them to pitch themselves, or I want to help facilitate a relationship that they can create.
I think that makes a lot more sense. And I never really saw myself on the receiving end of a lot of pitches, but now that we're talking about it, I actually, over the last 5 years, have been on the receiving end of tons of terrible pitches. So there,
I come out.
Yeah. And honestly, probably I can't even think of one that really wowed me over the 5 years. So it goes to show, I would imagine, what a wide open market for people like you who are empowering, hence the name of your podcast, right, to help people, small business owners like me. Not only I would like to be on the receiving, I would like more people like you to do this, because I want to be on the receiving end of better pitches. And I also want to know how to pitch better and authentically. So, okay, now here's the question. I don't know the answer to this. I know you work with clients, but do you have like a self-study, like for someone who's, because there's always that person, a lot of people actually in probably my community, who are like, this sounds great, but I'm not sure I'm quite ready to pay someone to help me with this. So what do you say to that person?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a ton of free resources. I have templates for pitching. I have the podcast that really I dig into messaging and how to pitch yourself and how and where to be seen to elicit the right reaction in your business. So yeah, so I have lots of free resources in that regard. But I also have a course that I created that's sort of takes the media piece of my visibility framework and digs deep into that aspect of visibility. And that's called Pitch School, the course, kind of like the event that I hosted. And that was Pitch School Live. This is Pitch School, the course. And so what I do in that is I talk a lot about creating the right messages for media outreach, and then how to pitch each type of media. And I think the work that someone taking that course would need to do before taking the course is to really figure out which is the media that's going to be right for you. And I talk a lot about that on the podcast. I talk a lot about that in all of my materials. I talk about it in the speaking work that I do, because I don't want you pouring all of your energy into getting that massive TV exposure if your goal is really to generate more revenue in your business. And so that's really what I want anyone taking the course to really hone in on. And anyone that's considering a visibility strategy at all is, what is your goal? And be open-minded to the many different forms of visibility that can bring you closer to that goal.
Yeah, even listening to you now opened my mind to be a little bit more receptive to the other, like getting back on stages after when the world opens back up.
Yes.
For like, that is something I've done, but I would say actively tried to avoid at the same time. Like I've actively tried to turn down opportunities to get me in front of the right audience, which sounds so crazy when I repeat it back.
Right.
Why would I have done that? But it's the fear of the unknown. And so like, this is why talking to you, I mean, you've hopefully you benefit everyone listening, but I feel like I've gotten a ton of benefit and motivation.
So glad.
So, and you answered when you were talking, you answered actually what my last question was going to be, what if someone wants to get started, where should they start? So it sounds like they have to work backwards. So they have to identify their goals, start with your podcast, then they can move into your course, or they can work with you, probably your course or work with you, right? It's kind of like one or the other.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think that it makes sense always to like, we should have a chat, like anyone who this is resonating with, we should chat, because there are so many different directions not so many, but there are several directions to take this work with me or otherwise, that I want you, one of the benefits that I know that I bring to my clients is taking focused action. I don't want you shooting in the dark and trying all the things and hoping that you tried the right thing to bring you to the right goal. So let's talk about whether it's like, is media the strategy that you should be pursuing? Then maybe the course is right. But if there's much more, for most people, it's a holistic strategy that's going to support them. And that's partially media, but also heavy doses of the other types of visibility that are going to help you create relationships with more of the right people that are going to make your business just easier to run, because you're going to have those relationships over time to support you whenever you launch something new or whenever you want to get out there. So that is the sort of the where to start is like, let's have a chat and see what makes the most sense.
I love that. So if someone wants to have a chat with you, how do they do that?
You can go to amandaberlin.com/consult, or just go to amandaberlin.com. If you go to the connect tab, those emails that go through that form come directly to my inbox. And I just love hearing from people. I love making new connections. And I know that we all can support each other. So don't hesitate to reach out. I read and respond to all of those emails that come in. So that would be a great way to get in touch.
Awesome. And we'll put all of the links, including your social links, in the show notes.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing this very unique topic that I've yet to talk to anyone about. So I hope
amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having and fostering these kinds of conversations.
You bet. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Empowered Business Podcast. Let's stay in touch. I just opened a brand new Facebook group for digital product creators. Whether you are new to digital products or an existing digital product creator, our new Facebook group, Digital Product Insiders, is perfect for you. Head on over to monicafroze.com/group to join for free. See you here again next week.